Hello everyone, this is Gabe Nedwick with my presentation for MPA 510 about classic theories and theories from the 1960s and 1970s. So we've talked about Max Weber already, who wrote the article about the bureaucracies, and this week we read about Anthony Downs, who wrote an article about the life cycle of bureaus, and Daniel Katz and Robert Kahn, who wrote about the open theories. So the theories about the bureaucracy from Weber had already been in place for about 40 years by the time um, up until the 60s. He wrote in 1922. So the idea of the bureaucracy was already in place with the hierarchy, the managers, things like that. And the new theory came along. It's not so much a new theory as much as adding on to the theory. And it's kind of going over the life cycle of a bureau, about how they have to grow and change, otherwise they are going to die, which is what that stands for. And it's not so much, like I said, it's not so much a new theory as much as just an evolution of the previous theories. And I think that that's just based on having the theories in place for about 40 years or so. They had time to think about it, see what had happened. And in the article, he was talking a lot about, not a lot about, but he was talking about NASA as an example of a bureau that was needing to kind of change or die, basically, which at this point it kind of has, but back in the 60s and 70s it was still fairly new. And even back then, when he was writing about that, it was still clear to see that it still needed to kind of change. And NASA came about from the early 60s with the whole space race idea. And so it had that idea where it started. It had a strong idea of what was going on, what they needed to do, and they kind of accomplished what they needed to do early on when they went to the moon, and then they just kind of stagnated. So again, my view of the whole thing is it's not a new concept, it's just an evolution of Weber's ideas, kind of taking his idea of the bureaucracy as a whole and not just focusing on like the management and subordinates, things like that, but more of a focus on how they need to change and grow and evolve. Otherwise, they won't be around. Here are my references. And in closing, again, the bureaus, as we read, need to grow. They need to adapt. They need to figure out what their goal is and focus on that and see what they can do to continue being relevant while still growing and evolving. And going back to the concept of NASA, poor Pluto. Thanks for watching, everybody.